It has been over 7 years since the Nintendo Switch came out, and just like literally everyone else on the internet at the moment, I'm going to be sharing my ideas and thoughts on what I hope the Switch 2 will be and more. Now there have been some really strange designs for what people think the Switch 2 will be, such as a DS-like console, a home console, or whatever the this is. Now, I'm sure most people could agree that the original Switch had some of the greatest design philosophy for any games console ever. I mean, a hybrid console that can be a home console, a handheld, and a tabletop console is just genius, and appeals to a very wide variety of gamers. Keeping this design philosophy in mind, the changes I have for hardware aren't terribly dramatic, as to keep the original appeal of this original Switch. First of all, the Joy-Cons. While great controllers are kinda small, I mean just look at it compared to my hand. Increasing the size of these controllers is obviously a good move, with contoured backs to provide a nice grip, especially for people with bigger hands. Given that the OLED Switch had a bigger OLED screen, I think that it's only fair that the Switch 2 has this bigger and brighter screen as well. Speaking of the OLED, it also had some other features that should be ported to the Switch 2, such as the stronger kickstand and the improved audio. The dock is also a big part of the Switch family, as it is what allows the Switch to enter TV mode. Now I've seen a few different ideas for a dock, such as this one where the screen is visible. This, in theory, could be a good idea, but if this is how the Switch connects to the TV, which would you rather look at? A 7-inch screen or a 70-inch TV? It's a pretty clear choice. So I think the dock that the OLED had with an Ethernet port, multiple USB ports, but a 4K HDMI port will work with the Switch 2. Next on the hardware list is the actual internals. Now there have been many leaks and half-confirmed rumours about the Switch 2's internals and performance upgrades. I won't go terribly far into the hardware, but I will tell you that the Switch 2 will have the power of the PS4 with the Nvidia T239 chip as confirmed by some leaks. Another thing, the Switch 2 will have a better network chip, allowing for faster download speeds. Now, I know that most of the Switch's online problems isn't the network chip or the user's internet speed, but actually Nintendo's own Switch Online servers. So for the release of the Switch 2, let's assume that the servers will be fixed, and in perfect working condition. As a final thing for the hardware internals, the storage of the original Switch was kinda a letdown, with only 32GB of space. But with the Switch 2, I see no reason that it can have 256 and 512GB or even a terabyte, given that you can get micro SD cards that have a terabyte of storage. So what gives, Nintendo? Now, the original Switch UI and baked-in apps were fine, but obviously this is an imagining video, so I've got many ideas that can add something fresh to the software. So here's a Photoshop that I made, don't mind some of the flaws, of what I think a redesigned home screen could look like. Now, apart from the obvious layout changes, the first thing you'll probably notice is that the background of the home menu dynamically changes depending on what game you've selected. For example, if you have Tears of the Kingdom selected, then it will display some art of Tears of the Kingdom as the background. And if you select Super Mario Odyssey, then it will display art from Mario Odyssey, you get the point. Hovering over a game will also magnify the tile to emphasize that it is the one selected. The next thing you will notice is that the menu buttons such as Profiles, the eShop, Settings and such have all been moved to the top. Now you might be asking, where did the other user profiles go? Well, don't mind the spacing changes here, but I made a little animation to show that. When you hover over the profile image, the rest of the buttons all collapse and the rest of the profiles expand out, leaving room for any extra profiles you might want to add. You can then click on the profile pictures to go to profile settings and all that. To the right of the menu buttons is the time, Wi-Fi, connection, and battery level in a little bubble so that the text doesn't become harder to read against certain backgrounds. Finally, you may have noticed that the Nintendo Switch Online button is gone. This is purposeful. I wasn't a massive fan of how the Switch Online app looked and performs like a web-based app, so it now has its own dedicated app so it runs better and looks cleaner. On this app, you can also access the features from the Switch Online mobile app such as Splatnet 3 and Nook Link. There are also two other features that relate to Switch Online. First of all is console-to-console multiplayer. Now, I'm not talking about games that communicate online, I mean party chat and messaging. By pressing the home button, you can bring up a By pressing the home button, you bring up a menu similar to the menu that appears when holding the home button, but with the functionality of the Xbox side menu. On this menu, you can see your friends list, if they're online, and what they're playing. Clicking on a friend will also allow you to direct message them and also invite them to a party chat directly in the console, which is way better than what currently exists. The other online feature is the Switch Online Retro Consoles app. To streamline the experience when playing these retro games, all of the released consoles on Switch Online will be collated into one app called the Nintendo Switch Virtual Console. When in the app, you can select a console from the ones available, which is NES, SNES, Game Boy, GBA, Sega Genesis, and N64, which then brings you to the game selection for said console. Well, there are my thoughts on what I personally think the Switch 2 will be like. Obviously, this is most likely not what will happen, but it's still fun to think about and imagine what the next generation of the Nintendo Switch could be. And I would also just like to thank you guys for the support on the last video. It wasn't going well for like the first day, but then you guys just picked it up, which is pretty cool. It's amazing, so thank you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.